Our speaker this morning is Mr. Steve Pennington. He came down from Annapolis early this morning. He's with the Department of Commerce. He's the Managing Director of Business and Industry Sector Development, which focuses primarily on job development with the ultimate goal of helping businesses in Maryland, keeping them happy and keeping them in Maryland, and also luring new business to the state. He has extensive experience as a sales leader in the telecommunications industry. His experience ranges from startups to large national enterprises, where he has led diverse sales teams targeting regional businesses and national accounts. Throughout his more than 30-year career, Mr. Pennington led the sales and marketing efforts at a number of companies, including Americom, USA Mobility, Bay Broadband, and Sprint. And most recently, he led the national business development efforts for a Seattle-based startup called ATG Risk Solutions. Mr. Pennington has a bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland, College Park, so let's give him a big Eastern Shore welcome this morning. Mr. Steve Pennington.
Good morning, everyone. Pleased to be here. And Steve, thank you for that introduction. And certainly it's great to come over this morning. Early start in Annapolis coming over, but about a little, I can't tell the state police how long it took me to get here, but it's a pretty quick drive down. But again, I know Governor Hogan wishes he could be there. Secretary Gill, many of you have met him, so I bring greetings from them, and just incredibly pleased to be here to address the crowd and talk a little bit about what's going on in Maryland. And as Steve mentioned too, I've got just about 3.5 years now in terms of government service, and it's been a great opportunity for me. My background's on the private side, so I think for me it's been a very good combination of taking my prior experience on the private side, running companies, running sales teams, just how to organize and create the proper culture. That's what we think we've done literally at the Department of Commerce in terms of what do we do today, how do we move things forward, how do we organize that effort, and where do we go from here. And again, just, it's been, very strong. And I was pleased to see also our economic development partners up here. I work closely with that whole crew there and our friends from Virginia and Delaware. Great to see them on the stage as well, because it is a team effort across the board. How do we all come together to make things work, to make things successful, and create those paths there. What I'd like to do, and hopefully I'll keep myself a little organized here, I had a PowerPoint put together, and I think that's always a good way to go, just to kind of go through this, and I've got about 50 slides. No, not quite that many, but I do have a few that we'll go through. And we'll first talk about kind of why Maryland. And as we talked, and it was great to get the feeling for here's what's happening at the local level, but I do want to provide that kind of statewide view of the why Maryland story as well, because that really ties to everything that's going on across the state, particularly here on the shore. So when we talk about industry sectors, that supply chain that's so critical, that's happening down here. So these core industries that we focus on at the state level and across the board, they're very important to every local community in what we do. When we look at Maryland, I think the first thing to think about is we've got phenomenal momentum. It's been a great 4-year run. We'll talk a little bit about some job numbers and where we are, but it's been a very strong 4 years in terms of adding businesses, in terms of what we've seen. Every sector is showing signs of strength, and it's been incredibly strong from that point of view. And I think the other thing too is that you've probably heard Secretary Gill talk about it. One of the things that we actually have always had, but we brand them and we tell the story better, is our tremendous statewide assets. We've had these forever, so whether it's military, whether it's the national labs we have, our federal assets, airports, transportation, position, those type of things. How do you package that into a better story? Because that helps businesses. It gives them, the ones that are here, the confidence to expand and grow and feel that they're in a good environment, and businesses that may be new to the state and want to consider, why would I come to Maryland? Why would I come to the lower shore to do business? It gives them the confidence to understand that here's a great place to do business. Here's a great connection of assets. And I think it's only fitting, too, that we hold this session here at Salisbury University, because one of the things that we've really done over the past 4 years is tie together economic development and our academic partners, because they are critical to what we do. We heard, finishing up here in comments, we heard the conversation about workforce and how important that is, but just the whole entrepreneurial attitude, how do the graduates that come out, and whether it's coming out of our community college programs, coming out of our four-year schools, UMES, Salisbury, all the community colleges that we have throughout the state, that's that foundation of how we get that going. We've got other fundamental issues in terms of how do we bring up the right talent coming through our K through 12, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of time to make that happen. But there is a focus that's going on across the state in terms of how do we get the right skill sets, to feed to the right jobs out there. And again, I'll keep moving through here. If we look at, the numbers don't lie, in terms of Maryland as a state, and, one of those things. We have the highest median household income of any state, in the country. And that's something to be applauded for. Now, I know it's different in every region, but again, from a statewide point of view, we have a very high standard of living. Small state, 6 million folks out there, but great gross, 9.3 billion in exports. So again, we're not that big, but we're very, very strong in terms of what we do for exports and in an income perspective. From that momentum piece of it, since January of 15, we've added about 120,000 jobs. Unemployment rate across the state is about 4.1%. From an innovation perspective, the things that drive businesses every day. We're the second most innovative state. We're number 3 in R&D intensity that comes from all of our universities throughout the state. Number 4 in growth and entrepreneurship, and number 5 in terms of the number of fastest growing companies within the U.S. So again, very, very strong numbers to be look at in terms of where we are from a growth perspective. From a workforce point of view, when you look at what you do workforce-wise, we've got an incredibly strong workforce, and the strength that we have here is really that technology and science worker, and that feeds every sector. So while manufacturing's out there, while agriculture's out there, as very important industry sectors, when you look at those sectors, where are the changes that are taking place in them today? It's to that technical worker. Everybody needs those STEM background, those skills, and that's an area where we are number 1 from any state in the union in terms of technology and science workers. Our professionals workers, the establishment, the technology jobs, again, that's a strength that we continue to grow. Education system, we talked about that, whether it's the high school education system, our university partners, again, great schools throughout the state that help feed the workforce, and that's a very, very thing to be proud of. And when companies come somewhere, that's the first thing they look at from a location point of view. Can I get the workers, and then where are my kids going to go to school? Because it's all about family. So they want to think about what do the schools look like, where do they go up into the university system, how can they stay within that and thrive and grow in that environment. And then location. One of the things that again is very clear for Maryland is our proximity and where we sit on the East Coast. We've got the benefit of geography, as they say. When you look at what's happening at the port, the airports, our proximity to markets, our cost of living, those type of things, they all tie together for a very, very strong story. And if you look at, just in terms of that cost of living, we get involved in conversations with companies across the U.S., and they're comparing, to New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., all those type of things. We've got, I think the next slide here, where one of them here talks about it. Oh, here we go, right here. The next one talks about, where we rank from a cost of living point of view. We're looking at Baltimore up there as being the lowest rank in terms of cost of living. When we come over here, I think that's a strength as well. So that quality of life, that cost of living, that attraction to workers, that's an important part of the story. We go to any company that comes here and say, if you're going to operate in Maryland, wherever that location may be, compared to other markets like a Washington, a Philadelphia, New York, or Boston, you're going to probably operate at about a 30 to 40% lower cost of doing business across the board for what you do from an operational point of view, and that goes right to the bottom line for any company. So again, that strategic location, that ability to serve markets, that ties to many of our core industries as well. You know, and we talked about the affordable living, you know, and you know, the just that, you know, where we are from that point of view. And again, I think also the diversity that Maryland has. When you look at the state in terms of, you know, we're right here at the beach, we've got the mountains not that far away, we've got the ocean, we've got the bay, we've got that quality of life, we've got cost of living. That's a total package that I think is very strong for anybody. And I think, you know, when you position each of your regions, and that's what I heard up here today, everybody's got that built into their story. So that's important to make sure that as you build that in there, you know, that's part of the story. What are those strengths you have locally that tie to, you know, positioning that to an existing business? Hopefully they're not thinking about leaving, but if they are, you got to do the sales pitch. And if you've got a new one coming in, why do they want to be there? So, you know, positioning that is a very important part of what we do. I want to run through some numbers here, and again, these are going to be tied to core sectors that we have within the state. And this is how we organize what we do at Department of Commerce in terms of the businesses we focus on. First, life sciences. We're a top 3 state in the country in terms of the bio and life sciences industry. We've got 42,000 jobs, you know, over 2,200 businesses out there, you know, 4.5 billion in wages. You know, it speaks for itself with what we do, and that industry serves everywhere, because when you look at the bio industry and the life sciences industry, it's a statewide industry. Yes, there's a lot of it that happens in Montgomery County, a lot of it happens in Baltimore, but it happens everywhere. So there are industries, you know, and businesses that are looking to expand. And again, that proximity to what we have here in the state is critical to positioning that. So again, life sciences continues to be one of the strongest businesses that we have in the state. Another core focus, you know, and strength from an industry point of view, this is something that, again, has statewide benefit, is in the cyber and IT space. You know, we used to say that Maryland was the national leader in cyber. We're saying that we are the international leader in cyber. When you look at the talent that is generated, you know, and this is coming out of, you know, that 95 corridor, but then that talent spreads throughout the state. You know, and that talent, you know, is the folks that are doing incredible things on offense and defensive cyber, coming out of the fort, out of Cyber Command, you know, out of our different bases and different activities that are happening there. We've got 113,000 jobs, over 11,000 businesses, you know, 12.8 billion in wages, you know, high average salary. That, again, is a statewide benefit that there are companies that can pop up, and the beauty of this business is it can be 2 brilliant people with an idea that can start that business in Salisbury, they can start it in Frederick, they can start it in Ocean City, they can start a cyber business anywhere, and they've got the talent to draw. So that's where finding this talent, you know, positioning, you know, here's where you want to live. They may not want to live over on the other side of the bay, and they want to get over here on the shore, which has great quality of life and a great place to be. Those businesses can be anywhere. Aerospace and defense, another statewide business that, when you look at the numbers here, yeah, it's got 135,000 jobs, huge, 9,500 businesses, 15.4 billion in wages out there, high average salary. This supply chain impacts every part of the state. You know, for what's happening down here within, you know, Wycomico County, you know, throughout, you know, every part of the state, certainly down in Somerset. You know, we heard about Wallops. You know, the things that are happening in aerospace and the supply chain, there are manufacturers that tie to every part of this. And there's a network out there that feeds this business. We've got 14 of the top 20 aerospace manufacturers operate in the state. You know, so everybody knows about the Northrops, the Lockheeds, the BAEs, you know, those kind of companies. They're all here, but then they depend on their network of supply chain out there and the small businesses where they buy from. So they all have to have those contractors that work through them. So again, incredibly strong from a business perspective. Manufacturing. Again, manufacturing is changing. There's no doubt about it. Manufacturing, you know, the plants are becoming smaller, much more technical, but again, still a very strong area of strength in the state. 105,000 jobs, 3,900 businesses. I was just doing a presentation yesterday, as a matter of fact, for the Maryland Economic Development Commission, and we were going through all the different opportunities that we funded for the past 4 years, excuse me. And when we looked at that, 33% of them were in manufacturing. You know, and the jobs were there, the investment, the CapEx, it continues to be an area of strength. Yes, it's a changing sector, and again, It can be from pharma, it can be to machines, tools, whatever, but it all ties to, an area of strength that we've got at the state level, and again, continues to be something that's an area of focus for us. Certainly over here on the shore, agriculture, we've got Purdue, certainly a international leader in the space, from a sector perspective. You've heard about the expansion that they're making up a trade point, but every aspect of agriculture, is incredibly important to what we do. The next one ties right to food. So ag and food tied together. Our natural position, we talked about that advantage of location for distribution. The food sector, when you see what Amazon does with their distribution centers up and down the East Coast, and other companies that are putting that in there, it's all tied to how do they move these, how do they move these products? And as you see from a food perspective also, you're going to see it become smaller, more localized from a distribution point of view, because everybody wants the just-in-time distribution, the whole growth in organic products, those type of things continue to expand. The energy sector, again, from a state point of view, energy is an interesting business in that, we've got a very strong, commitment to energy, and there's a number of sectors out there, and we won't get into the emotional or, other discussion, whether it's the wind or solar, that type of thing, but energy and green programs, these things are coming, and they're thriving industries across the world. And when you look at the energy sector, however it develops, we want to make sure that, we're at the center of that. And I think from a state perspective, we are doing that today to make sure that we're positioning ourselves well for success in energy, to be able to take advantage of that. It ties again to what we do from R&D, from innovation, from high-tech workers, because it's all of that type of knowledge and expertise that helps us grow and expand that sector. And the state does have a very strong commitment to energy. So whether it's programs, for restoring the bay, which tie to a cleaner environment, all these programs and money that's invested in that really help fuel that. And I know that when you look at the different incubators and innovation centers that are out there, many of their products and many of their focuses are on energy programs. And then for the military side, again, this is something that, we don't look at it as an industry, but when you look at it as one core sector, the bases we have throughout the state, almost 400,000 jobs, direct wages of $23 billion, induced input $57 billion, 15% of our gross domestic product, gross state product. It's an incredible industry, and what that does is that does fuel, supply chain requirements across the state, literally in every sector. Because when you look at these bases, they may be, somebody's focused on life sciences and disease, somebody's focused on advanced manufacturing, another might be focused on, aerospace and products and those type of things. So again, this feeds right into that supply chain for all the core industries that are strong within the state. And needless to say, tourism. We're in the heart of tourism country over here. Tourism is a great statewide industry. $17.7 billion spent on tourism in 2017. Supports 225,000 jobs. 6.1% of all jobs in Maryland were directly related to tourism. It pays $2.4 billion in state and local taxes. And if you looked at it as a sector, it's the 10th largest employer out there, so we certainly recognize that tourism is one of those businesses as a sector that's incredibly important. You look at the small towns out there, the arts programs and the arts districts that are set up. Again, they fuel that. Ocean City, everywhere fuels that. We heard about Harriet Tubman, bringing in 100,000 visitors. That's all revenue that feeds that feeds the local businesses here in our communities. Our mission across the board, as Steve mentioned, and I get with my team all the time and I drive them crazy because sometimes in economic development you can go, well, I've got all these very high-level things that I need to do that are from a theoretical point of view. And I go, whatever your sector is, whatever, and this is to my team I'm giving this speech, whatever your goal is, there's a different algorithm for everybody out there. But at the end of the day, there's an equal signs over there, and there's jobs at the end of it. So we've got our team that's very focused on outreach and outcomes. We want to make sure that we're touching all these core sectors. We actually map, within our team, here's where you're going, here's the sectors you're on, that you focus on for our regional team that's out there, and it's different across the state. because somebody here on the Eastern Shore, they're probably going to have a higher concentration of looking at, small manufacturers, of ag, of maybe even some aerospace, that type of thing. You get somebody over in the 95 corridor, that's going to have probably more of a higher concentration of cyber and IT and maybe life sciences. But again, we measure that because we want to make sure that our team that's out touching you every day is touching you in the right place, that we're focused on the right things that are important to you. We support small business every day. That's incredibly important. It's the toughest category to touch because there's about 500,000 small businesses that are scattered throughout the state. But figuring out who they are, how do we work with them? Our mantra too is to make sure that we're protecting businesses that are here today. We're always focused on growth. We're always focused on attraction. You have to have that as part of it. But if we don't focus on your business today to make sure we're helping you grow and expand and taking care of what's important to you, then we're not doing our job. And then we've got a number of tools out there as well to help fuel that. Workforce development, we work very closely with Kelly Schultz, and her team over at Dollar, and everything that happens across workforce development. So whether it's the EARN program that they have or PWQ, which is training grants that we have, and then working across the board with all the different stakeholder groups. There are so many organizations throughout the state that are focused on workforce development. Somebody, and I guess the theme up here too is they said, what are one of the things that we can do, to be effective? I think collaboration on those efforts is how do we create workers, how do we create plenty of workers in the right space and bring up that right level of talent? So that workforce development is an important part of what we do. Wouldn't be a PowerPoint if we didn't have an org chart up here, right? But anyway. The detail, it just shows how we have our team organized. And I've got a finance team, that I always joke around. They're the guys with the checks, not me. But when you look at what we do, we've got core teams that, manage the regional reps. We've got program managers that are focused on aerospace, that are focused on cyber, that are focused on life sciences. We've got experts out there that are focused on energy, on manufacturing, and ag. There's a fella, and I joke around and tell the story. I'm not an ag guy, but many of you may know Paul Spees. He's a Talbot County guy. When I'm interviewing Paul, and he's our program manager for agriculture, I'm going, God, he tells a good story, And then I get him in the job, and he starts interacting with everybody, particularly over here on the shore, and he really knows this stuff, and he can speak, the language, and he's in and out, and he's an incredible asset. So he's just an example of, the type of people we try to hire and bring into those subject matter expert roles for those industry sectors. So we've got a team there at Commerce that's ready to help you grow and expand. And as I know all of our economic development partners have heard me say, it's a team sport, so engage us, bring us into that conversation, that's what we do. Couple initiatives that are incredibly important. More jobs for Marylanders. We've got 58 companies that have applied. 2,100 jobs that are projected through that program. That's in that manufacturing space. So how do we continue to grow jobs there? We've got a prospect list of many, many more than that, and actually many that have put letters of intent in to hire. So we're waiting to see that. We think that that's going to have an upward trajectory, that's going to be very strong. I think part of the challenge in the MJM is the fact that we need to get more workers, and continue to do that. And then Partnership for Workforce Quality, that's a program we have that actually is training dollars for a specific program from a training perspective that you might have. A couple other new tax credits that we want to make sure that everybody understands are out there. Buy Maryland Cybersecurity. On this one, this is where local companies here can buy a cybersecurity product and get a tax credit for buying it from a Maryland-based company. Again, strong program, ties right to one of our core industries that we want to help support. There's a group of companies that we certify that are the sellers. And then as a buyer, there's certain standards there. But again, reach out to our team. We can provide all those details. And then we've got an investment program for helping to grow cybersecurity companies as well. But if you look at where we're going, look at the strengths we have, that focus on core industries. How do they relate to your local jurisdiction, your local towns, counties, what's there, what are your strengths, understanding who's there, understanding what that business mix looks like, tying it to the critical industries, and then continue to work on developing workforce. Again, those are the things that we do every day, and I'm pleased to be here to give you a little bit of overview from that. I'll be here for a few more hours, and if you've got any questions, glad to engage. Thank you.